Now, my host today says that Nigeria's National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is opaque, even in its financial system. The way the NNPC is run, he says, the more you look, the less you see, because the NNPC is the cash cow of whoever is in power here in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitomobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Now, my host today is a former President General of the Trades Union Congress, TUC, first elected in 2007. He's also a former president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, that's PENGASSAN. He says that if the administration of Nigeria's new president, Muhammadu Buhari, doesn't do anything about the National Petroleum Corporation within its first 100 days, they will also be sucked in. So, join me after the break. I'm counting down 60 minutes with Peter Esele, the former president of the Trades Union Congress. Welcome back. Welcome, Mr. Esele. Thank you very much for coming back on the program.
Thank you too.
Well, I was reading you on the NNPC, but I actually wanted us to start from the point of trade unions. You know, going into those elections, we suddenly found that a lot of the governors of at least 15 states in Nigeria weren't paying salaries and so on. And then, of course, we'd had that brouhaha from the election in the NLC. And I thought, you know, are trade unions still relevant today if people aren't paid salaries in the states for upwards of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and no trade union is saying anything about it?
First, trade unions are relevant. Trade union movement is an institution. It doesn't have to do with the individual. They may have a problem because depending upon who is leading. I also tell you, I was surprised when there are some states that have not paid salaries for 6 months.
Yes.
And I think action should have been taken long ago, because close to election is when you also have a lot of power, a lot of leverage, because the person doesn't want you to damage him, and people don't want to know that they are not paying salaries. I think to some extent that came to some of us as a very big surprise. And again, we also have to look at the National Secretariat. The way the trade union movement is that if report does not come from the state, there's no way maybe the national president or anybody will be aware of. I'm aware that when this report started filtering in, it was also at the heat of the election. And trade unions too, first thing we also need to do is that we need to make sure democracy is sustained. And if at the heat of the election you now decide to call a strike, that too, you are heating up the polity, and it can also be a clog in the wheel in our democratic process.
Yes.
But be that as it may, I think my successor, the TUC president, what he said was, okay, fine, after the election, we need to now engage, that we will now need to engage the governors and also engage the federal government, and to see how this payment could be made. And one of the fundamental problems we have is that our institutions are very weak, which means that governors or those whoever occupy public office can also dip their hand in the till to prosecute the election.
You don't think there were legitimate reasons for not being able to pay salaries?
I think some of the reasons they were given was the fall in the price of crude. And we are all aware that 80% of our revenue comes from crude oil sales. And when you have crude oil from $150 a barrel now going for between $50 to $65. So they've been facing some fundamental challenges. But what I think is that our government should also learn to cut their coat according to their cloth. And if they had to cut it in accordance with what they have, I think they will also need to throw away a lot of wastages that are in the system. There are just too many political appointees as far as I'm concerned. So there are a whole lot of challenges, and hoping that as we evolve, as we grow, and understand what is best practice, hoping that things will get better.
You say that there are a lot of political appointees, a lot of people who argue in favor of those appointees point to the Constitution and the fact that with the federal character principle that we have to obey, it seems that the Constitution is recommending a minister from each state. But is it compulsory or is it mandatory that we must have 36 ministers minimum?
I'm not a lawyer, but I also heard another legal argument, which means that if a man is elected for 4 years, if in his 4 years and is able to take the ministers around the whole federation, then he has also complied
by rotation.
By rotation, and also comply with that. So if I decide to have 15 ministers, and if after I have them for 2 years, and I decided that, okay, fine, I've gotten the best out of these ministers, and I go for another 15 or 21, and at the end of the day, I still achieve my 36. So there are
achieving the same thing.
Yes, I'm still achieving the same thing. That's one. Then number two, what stops us from amending the Constitution? What stops people from saying, okay, we think your overhead is on the high side? Let's take, for example, if Nigeria is a PLC. We all talk about best practice. Are you going to run your PLC this way? Are you going to look at it and say, okay, I'm not making profit? Despite the fact you're not making profit, you are still carrying so much overhead. Because at the end of the day, when things don't go well, it's always the workers that suffer all of this. It's not really the high and mighty that suffers all of this. So there are so many ways we can work around this, get out of this circle of being, whether it's north, south, Igbo, Yoruba, Christian, Muslim. I think we need to put our best foot forward. That's really where our country can grow.
In my introduction, I talked about you saying that if Buhari's administration doesn't do something about the NNPC, within the first 100 days of that administration, they will be sucked in, especially if they don't have a plan for the NNPC. What kind of plan do you think they should have? What do you envisage to be important, to be included in a plan for the NNPC?
When I made that statement was from the basis that when Obasanjo was also coming to be the president of Nigeria, Obasanjo made similar comment. He said he was coming to transform the oil and gas. And then when Obasanjo became president, he did nothing. Obasanjo himself not only was he president and commander-in-chief, he also became the minister of petroleum. For almost 8 years, we never had a minister. It was at the twilight of his administration that he now had a special advisor on petroleum, which was Rewanu Lukman. Instead, what we had was an advisor, but we never had a minister. So what I meant was, okay, if he really has a plan for that sector, because by being commander-in-chief and also becoming minister of petroleum, that automatically makes him chairman of the board of NNPC. So now, in terms of best practice, there are no checks and balances. So he's the one that will formulate the policy. He's the one that will implement the policy.
Execute it.
And so at the end of the day, when there are errors, nobody is there to make all the necessary corrections.
Okay, can we say from the other angle that with the way you've said the industry is opaque and there's no transparency, perhaps President Obasanjo looked at it and said, I'm the best person to be here because anybody else will turn out to be fraudulent and not run the industry openly.
Then that also means that it's indispensable. Nobody is. You see, what we're looking at here is institution. It's not the individual. What we've always had is very strong personality. There's nothing wrong with somebody having a strong personality. But again, it's the institution. If board of NNPC makes a mistake and the Minister of Petroleum oversees it and says, no, I don't agree with this. And then it now comes to the president. What you have now is that you now have 3 eyes looking at the same problem. And they may be looking at it from different angles. But what you have in NNPC was the Minister of Petroleum is also the chairman of the board of NNPC. So tell me how the GMD of NNPC is going to sit on the same table and disagree with the Minister of Petroleum. It's not going to happen. So first is that the GMD will look at the minister because they're on the same board and toe the line of the minister. So when the decision of the board comes to the table of the minister, because the minister was also part of it, so what you have is that a script is being written.
And once everyone agrees on that script,
it goes. So nobody is coming to now say, hey, let's look at this again. So that is one problem. Another aspect of it is that in 5 years, you had like 6 GMDs of an NPC.
Why do you think that was?
Now, one of the reasons that is that you dare not disagree. If you disagree, you are gone. I know about 2 or 3 GMDs out of these 5 who will look at the minister in the face and say, we're not going this route. And then the next thing, the man is sitting in his office and there's an announcement on radio that Mr. XYZ has been removed as the general managing director of NNPC. And one Mrs. Angela has now been made to take over the seat. So the next person that is coming now knows where the power is. So he or she dances to the tune of where the power is because he or she wants to keep the job. So that too is another problem. If I know that my tenure is for 5 years, you give me a budget. When you give a budget, then there are targets that goes with it. So now the person knows that, yes, he will be judged by his targets or how he's able to meet all of his targets. And if he doesn't meet it, he's fired. CBN governor has a tenure. NCC has a tenure. NNPC does not. Almost all the government parastatals have a tenure, but NNPC does not. So the man comes in and you are fired. And I know of one person in NNPC too who was running one of the refineries, and during the privatization he was asked to sign off one of those refineries, and which happens to be the one in one of the petrochemicals, and he was asked to sign off, and the guy said he's not signing, and they just think it's not in accordance with the act setting it up. And the guy was transferred to NNPC R&D, and when you are transferred to R&D,
it's Siberia.
We call it Siberia. It was kicked out.
And those transfers will happen with, you have no recourse to anybody.
No. So it happened, but finally was able to keep himself above the water, follow instruction. But he was also very good on the job. We all know him. And then later he also now became the GMD of NNPC. Because there are people who also know his antecedents and who have felt, okay, let's bring him back. You know, those are some of the things that I keep talking about. The labor movement I've been talking about, emphasizing on the need for people working in NNPC to know that yes, they are not working for the individual; they are working for the state. And they are the life wire.
And their loyalty is to the state.
But the way the system is, they can't say the loyalty is to the state, why they cannot take care of their families.
Okay, let me just stop you there. What is wrong with a system in which, to all intents and purposes, I imagine, and I see the Minister for Petroleum as the head of the board of the NNPC. If you and I agree that the NNPC is the cash cow, it is the corporation that makes money for us, what is wrong with the minister sitting there as the CEO of a company if we look at the NNPC as a company?
The minister cannot be CEO of the company because the CEO and the chief executive is the GMD of NNPC.
Right.
So what you have is that the GMD of NNPC is saddled with the responsibility of running the NNPC day to day.
Right.
So when he is running the NNPC day to day, what is expected is that he brings whatever it is that he needs to do or whatever has been approved by the board. I expect that to go straight to the minister, that this is what we agreed and this is the direction I'm driving an NPC. And then you now have what I call a debate. You see, one of the beauty of it's just that in this part of the world we find it difficult to accept criticism. It makes you better. It makes you look at it that okay, and then it also helps you to go ahead before you move anything forward. For you to
give everyone a chance.
Everyone a chance
to voice.
And then, to voice, and then you now have a fresh. You may also even have a fresh perspective to whatever you are doing, and that is why. Okay, how come we have a president, an individual as a president, but we have over 300 and something people in the House of Rep. We have another over 109 in the Senate. Why don't we just say, okay, since the president is the president, it should just be all. There's no need of going to the Senate. So what we're not saying is that let the CEO, you can bring a neutral person. Don't be the chairman of the board of an NPC. Whatever the board agrees, they bring it to the minister. Then the minister looked at it, and then the minister also has his own kitchen cabinet or whatever, or his own staff inside the Ministry of Petroleum.
Do we need a Ministry of Petroleum Resources? If we have an NPC, you're telling us now, breaking it down. The NNPC has a board. The GMD is like the CEO. So I'm imagining that on this board, there are many directors who do different aspects of this petroleum business. Do we then need a minister?
Yes, one of the reasons why we need a minister for petroleum is that because petroleum crude oil is international. it's a global thing. Everybody is involved in it.
Yes.
So you cannot, if you don't have a minister, that means the GMD now not only takes care of the day-to-day running, it now plays the political side. The minister is supposed to play the political side of it, while the GMD of the country plays the technical role
of the oil business.
Of the oil business.
Yes.
So when it comes to the political angle, to look at the national interest in vis-a-vis in the international palace, then that is where the minister and the president comes in. It's like a president goes out and is signing a bilateral agreement. The president just signed a bilateral agreement, but you have all the other technocrats around the president who will now come and dot the I and cross the T before the president finally has signed his signature.
One thing I know people have been saying over the years is that we still do not know how much oil we sell. There are no figures whatsoever. I mean, can that be normal?
I was a member of Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, which is 90.
Yes.
I was a member of it, and I know each time we have to carry out a report, we get our biggest problem from an NPC. Because when we look at production, we get different figures from an NPC, different figures from IOCs, different figures from CBN, different figures from tax office. So how do you now reconcile all of this? And then you now come again to say, we always have issues around PMS. How many liters of petrol are we consuming in the country? There was a time when we had the strike of 2012. People always say, oh, we shouldn't have stopped that strike. But people always forget that at the end of the day, you want to strengthen the institution. It's not to collapse or bring down the institution. And what came out of it is just that I always say that we have what I call front page mentality. Once the thing is happening, once the thing is no longer on the front page news,
we all withdraw, new news comes
we all
in.
withdraw from it and forget about it completely. But the Labour movement didn't. We didn't. We followed it. We went to meet the National Assembly. We found out that initially, one time they said it was 67 million. But after that strike of 2012, it was reduced to 30-something million.
Why will we have to lie about what we're consuming of PMS in a day? What is the reason for the lie?
It's, most of the things you have is what I'll call the under-table deals. At the time, you have 104 companies bringing in products, and you don't have to have a tank farm. I think I give credit to the executive secretary of PPPRA then, one Reginald Stanley. He now came up and said, if you don't have a tank farm, you are not going to have a license to bring in any product. Formally, Angela, depending upon who you know, you just walk in there with a briefcase and you get your license. You get to the door, you sell to somebody else.
Right outside the door.
You sell to somebody else. And then sometimes you also get a lot of these licenses. You may not even bring in products. Depending on how connected you are, somebody signs for you and what have you. And then you now
there's no actual product.
So, but at the end of the day, if that was only fallout of that strike, you reduce it by over 30 million. And they have there was discrepancies of what is our average daily consumption. Till now, we still have that issues. But now it's not as bad as it was before the strike of 2012. So if you now look at all of these things, that's why you see we keep talking about NNPC was how NNPC is structured. And my inside information, being on the AT board, I was also on the board of Petroleum Pricing Products Regulatory Authority, PPPRA, also made me know how some of these decisions are arrived at. Okay, you have in template to fix the price of petrol. The board was considered in such a manner whereby those of us who will be against it are in minority. So whatever you do, you have to vote. You are going to be in the minority. But the difference is that we can now come out and also cry out. We've always talked about the template. There are a whole lot of issues around it. Well, I said the government need to do something is that if as president or as minister, and you are a politician, one of the things we must know, politicians are survivalists. It doesn't matter whether they are born in the UK or they are from America. The only word the politician understands is
how to survive.
How to survive in any environment and get power. What the difference between a politician in Europe or a politician in America and a Nigerian politician is strictly the strength of the institution that checks that aspect of the human nature that is grab. In UK or America, they know that if they do grab, the police is there to pick them up. The police does not have to report to the Prime Minister before
seek his permission
before picking up anybody. Same in America. But in this part of the world, the police may even have to report to the president that President XYZ is guilty, is carrying out some fraudulent act, and president, oh, it's from my party, don't go there. Our institutions are very weak.
Yes.
You don't need to now go and say, okay, because I'm going after XYZ, he's breaching the constitution, and somebody from somewhere says, either it's from my tribe, it's from my religion,
or it's a friend of the president,
or is a friend of the president, or a friend of the governor, or a friend of the chief of army staff, or a friend of IG. So at the end of the day, the process is truncated. So that for me is the problem we have. That's why I said, if the president has a plan for the oil and gas industry, he has to knuckle. He has to make sure that he comes down and do that as soon as possible before he starts seeing the beauty that NNPC represents.
The beauty that NNPC represents. Join us again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela. Angela, that is a very great question. That's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put. 60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetomobi. On my hot seat today, Peter Esele is the former President General of the Trades Union Congress, TUC. Now, you talked about the, how did you put it, the nice place that the NNPC is. You've also had cause to complain, Mr. Esele, about the fact that the Petroleum Minister maintains an office in the NNPC building. And I thought, well, what's wrong with that? If the NNPC is the cash cow, and she's overseeing, or he is overseeing that cash cow, why not have an office right there with them?
Okay, why don't the minister also go to the fuel station where the crude actually is also coming out? So the minister is a political office, irrespective of what you feel.
Yes.
And you know where politicians are in this climb, everybody's there. So first you need to ask yourself is like telling me, this was the first time it has happened in our history where a minister's office is domiciled, Minister of Petroleum is domiciled inside NNPC. You have the Federal Secretariat building where all the ministers are. So if the Minister of Petroleum, by whatever the responsibility occupy, can afford to have his own office. Why I'm saying all of this is that so that it gives room for the GMB to know that, oh, I'm working, I have to drive out to see the minister. Not that the minister comes in and he has a couple of friends and the next thing they walk and they're in the GMB's office. It creates its own distraction. I don't know. I've worked. You're working in a company and the next thing is that you're always seeing your boss in your face all the time. No. It creates distraction. And the fact that you know that your boss is next door, it also has its own challenges. Because each time we talk about NNPC, it's not vis-a-vis as if NNPC is evil. No, we need an NNPC. The country needs an NNPC. But what I keep talking about is how to make sure that the system within NNPC works. Because there are too much in political interference from outside on the management and staff of NNPC.
What do you mean by that, political interference? How can anyone interfere with my job if I'm the GMD of NNPC?
They can't interfere with your job if your job is at their mercy. Because the bottom line is that a president knows that except he steals, he's going to be president for 4 years. Except you come and impeach him. A senator knows that no matter what you do, he's going to be there for the next 4 years.
Don't I know
but
as GMD?
You don't know as GMD of NNPC, no. You don't know how long
I exist at the pleasure of the president.
So when you don't know all of that, I don't know how many times you are able to stand up to the president. I can remember vividly before the last increase on PMS. And I got a call from the GM that the prices are going to be up on the 1st of January. It's going to be up in 2 hours. And I was like, why? Why were we having that conversation? He just said it's instruction from above. I said, can you not
argue it out?
But he just said no. His hands are tied, but he can't. So it's the system. Because it's like now it's easier for me to express how I feel because of the system that I grew up from. It's allowed in the labor movement for us to disagree. Okay, I'll give an example. We want to go on strike.
Yes.
We would debate, and that's why we don't wake up one morning and say we are going on strike at the national level the following day.
Yes.
They have to be debate. Then we'll not give ultimatum. Inside of those ultimatum is an ongoing debate. And then at the end of the day, we also want to call off. We will also know how to call a meeting, debate about the call off. And then once that decision is arrived at by whatever means that we take, we all queue behind that decision. That's the key. So those are the things that you see that it gives. There are certain places I go to and I find out that they just can't express themselves and I start wondering why. But over time, I'm also now beginning to understand that it has to do with your environment, how you grew up, the system that was built around you. And that is why most times we keep talking about we just want the process to be allowed to run. We want best practice. We want things done in a manner that will be best for everybody.
Are you hopeful, though, that President Buhari, having been in that industry before, can reform the petroleum sector?
Yes, I think in the labor movement we always say hope is one thing we must never give up.
Yeah.
I will have the hope to see if he was also a former minister of petroleum or commissioner then.
Yes.
He was also in power when the refineries were built. So let's hope now that his second coming will be able to look at the sector and do what is right.
Must the minister of petroleum come from the oil producing states?
I don't really care about where the minister comes from. What I care about is the capability and the capacity for the minister to deliver on set goals and target. Where he's from, I think is serious-minded people don't think where somebody is from. They just think of, can you deliver?
Right. And so what would be your reaction then to that forensic audit of the NNPC? Were there any surprises to you? Did anything shock you there, especially in the light of the allegation by the former CBN governor?
No, I wasn't shocked at all. I wasn't shocked at all because if you've been following the 80 report, it's not going to be shocking to you at all. I like the idea of when everybody is talking, you are quiet.
Yes.
When you say what you want to say, probably it takes them like 4 or 5 years before they meet you up to what you are talking about.
Yes.
It's like somebody was arguing refinery we did not. Why would the union was removed from the refinery not to be privatized? I said no. I said it took people 7 years to be having this discussion.
Yes.
While I signed as PENGASSAN president for that refinery to be sold on 5149 way back in 2006. Somebody before me signed in 2005. So if in 2005 the union PENGASSAN then have signed off on 5149, which is whoever the private investor gets 51%, which gives him the right to operate the refineries, where the federal government owes on to 49, they can reduce it if there's progress being made.
Yes.
So if it's taking you 6 years, why the union have already envisaged all of this, and because you did nothing, so the union will also have to now change its tactics. The MD of Warri Refinery, for example, we had to protest for his approval to get to 5 million naira. How can somebody running a refinery?
What do you mean?
He cannot. His expense. He cannot approve any amount over 5 million
to run a refinery.
A refinery, yes. He cannot approve more than 5 million, and that is like about $25,000. It was even less until the union protested. Now 5 million naira, and these are things that you don't get locally. So if there's a coil or a bolt you need to get, you have to bring it from Abuja. He has to go to Abuja for approval. Once he's beyond 5 million, he has to go to Abuja for approval. And with all of these bureaucratic bottlenecks, what you have is that sometimes that refinery will lie fallow for another 6-7 months because
the approval
hasn't come. So how do you now expect that MD to run that refinery successfully? In other parts of the world, all you run a refinery is budget and target. You ask the MD to run this refinery, what do you need? And he tells you everything he or she needs. And then you tell him, okay, fine, for me to provide this for you, this is what I expect to get.
Is it a valid reason to say the reason they put that limit of 5 million there is because people have tendency to be fraudulent and look for repairs where there are none?
You see, that is a negative way of solving problem. When you think from the perspective that is it that our people are fraudulent,
Yes.
so because they are fraudulent, therefore, do you have to collapse the system because you think somebody is fraudulent? What you need to do is to put the appropriate control
In place.
It's not, that's not the type of control that I expect that you put in place. The appropriate control is, first of all, okay, you want XYZ. I'll use company for example.
Yes.
Again. Shareholders come, I also work for a company, and they tell you, this is the target. What do you need? When I used to go offshore,
Yes.
my boss walked up to me and said, this is, you are going to XYZ.
Yes.
Now, can I know what you need? And I say, this is what I need. Nobody is going to take away from what I need. Nobody will add, nobody will subtract.
Yes.
That means I'm taking full responsibility for that.
Yes.
And then the company also now let me know that this is the allowance we are paying you on a daily basis.
Right.
This is what we are charging the company. And this is what we must deliver to the company.
We're expecting from
Yes,
you.
and this is what we are expecting from you. Failure to meet all of these criteria, you are shown the exit door. That itself is control.
Yes.
So first is responsibility. So if at the end of the day I cannot approve more than $20,000 and there's something of about $100,000 that is lying fallow,
Yes.
I don't take responsibility for anything. You can't owe me to anything. So it's for you to put the appropriate control. But the kind of controls that you put in Abuja,
Yes.
and again, you said the person's title, and again, we also don't respect title. The person managing the refinery, he's called Managing Director of Warri Refinery. To manage and to direct, that is where those words came from. Managing Director. Manage the refinery and direct the refinery. So
For 5 million.
So when you now also have Group Managing Director, the Group Managing Director also have his own limit. Then the minister also have his own limit. And I think they say you can also approve anything above 50 million. Anything above 50 million goes to the Federal Executive Council. So first thing we need to look at is, does
That process.
yes, does it make the organization function properly? You see, one of the things I keep referring to Europe or America
Yeah.
is that when they run a system, they find out that, oh, there are problems here, problems
Bottlenecks
there. Yes.
here.
Then they start looking at how to make sure that doesn't happen a second time.
Yes.
They'll be running this system now for God knows when. So that is the challenge before each and every one of us.
Why are our refineries not working today?
How will you make the refineries work with all of this that is going around? First is, even there are times Port Harcourt Refinery worked for 21 days last year. In sometime in
2014.
Yes, sometime in November, works for 21 days.
No, Mr. Esele, just stop right there. Out of 365 days, Port Harcourt Refinery, what's the capacity?
First thing you need to ask yourself is that when we talk about the functionality,
Yes.
have you done your turnaround maintenance?
And
Have you done
how
the
often
routine?
should that be done?
Yeah, it has. You see, most of these things are supposed to be an in-house thing. So when NNPC wants to do their turnaround maintenance, it now becomes news, front page news. When I say it becomes front page news, is that it now becomes a matter for the Federal Executive Council
Yes.
of President and all the ministers in the country to sit over. Then you know something is wrong.
When it has a managing director,
Exactly.
as you said.
Exactly. So you know something is wrong. It's like telling me now you're running a refinery in America and you say Obama and co have to sit over whether the refinery should be approved or not.
So are we never going to have refineries? You know, because I remember we issued licenses at one time. My research shows me that it takes only 3 years to build a refinery.
There are even modular refineries that you can build in 18 months.
In 18 months
Yes,
now.
which are smaller refineries that can maybe refine about 10,000, 20,000
Even if it's
barrels.
our local
Yeah.
consumption.
Yeah. So, but when you have all of that,
Yes.
if I always believe that the foundation of any society, of anything you do, it's very important. It's the foundation. no matter how good you think you are, if the foundation is wrong, it's only a matter of time for the whole thing to collapse.
Are we running on a faulty foundation now?
Yes, yes, the foundation is faulty. So if the foundation is faulty, you can't expect an NPC to perform magic when the very principle on which it is founded on is faulty.
Yes.
You can't expect refineries to work the way you want it when the foundation too is faulty. Now, the Warri Refinery may not be at an optimal level, but I also found out that the Warri Refinery does not have crude to refine.
Why not?
They said pipelines are being vandalized, so as a result, they cannot give it crude. But I also know that you can move crude in barges. But why they are not doing that is mind-boggling. Because no matter how much, if Warri Refinery is able to process 2 million liters a day of petrol, if it's able to bring out 2 million liters or refine crude of 2 million liters a day, it will also go a long way to cushion whatever effect that we are talking about. Not only cushioning the effect, it's the economic life in that place where it is situated.
Will thrive.
Yes, we also thrive.
So because talking about this economic life in the area, when you say a refinery is not operating, what does that mean? They turn the engine off. You know, I'm trying to break it down.
Yes, it's down.
The machine is turned off.
The most important thing is the FCC in a refinery is the most important thing. You know, if the FCC is not working, that refinery can't function properly because it's actually responsible for cracking the crude so that it's able to give you all
the different products.
Yes. Kerosene is always the first to come out.
Okay.
Kerosene, petrol, diesel, and then before you now look at the other chemicals that we're talking about.
So we're missing out on possible employment. Huge employment.
Yeah.
What happens to the workers in that sector?
I think PENGASSAN is able to take care of its members. You don't have a choice. You have to pay the salaries, and the workers are not happy either. That
they're paying salaries for no work done.
You are paying salaries for your inefficiency. You are paying salaries because
you have refused to do the right thing.
Yes, nobody is being responsible for anything. 16 years. I'm not even talking about, it's not even about Goodluck Jonathan's administration.
No.
So just let us look at Nigeria from 1999. Our refineries have not been.
16
years.
Yes.
And licenses were issued. Most of the people were issued licenses, thought that with that license they become an overnight millionaire or billionaire.
Yes.
Of all of those, I think it's only Orient Petroleum and the Dangote that is coming up. Dangote's refinery, 400,000 barrels, will be coming on stream. I think it's 2017.
Is it a modular refinery?
No, it's 400,000 barrels. Yeah,
okay.
huge refinery. Already Dangote's refinery alone is almost the same with the NNPC for refineries that they have.
The capacity of Dangote.
Same capacity. Yes.
And so if Dangote can do that, 400,000 barrels a day, why can't the federal government? We have a new president now. I imagine that if he tinkers with anything in the NNPC, won't people read political meanings into it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because everybody just wants things done properly. Even people in NNPC want things done properly. They are not happy. I think the information that will be given to the president is also going to come from NNPC. The workers in NNPC, from the GMDs, I've had interaction
with a few of them.
When they were there, and I know how difficult the difficult situation they find themselves.
Yes,
it's really tough for them.
All right, we'll take another break now. When we come back, I want us to look at the one of the excuses often given about the petroleum industry and the fact that we don't know how much we really make is the story they tell us about how capital intensive it can be, and how, because we need to do repairs quickly, sometimes we can use some of the money to do repairs before it goes into the Federation account. So join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask. You get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela every week on this station. 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Peter Esele, former president of the Trades Union Congress, TUC. You know, the Constitution says that every money that we make must go into a dedicated account. We've had cause in the past to hear explanations that sometimes, because the petroleum industry can be capital intensive, when the minister needs to make repairs, there's no time to go and seek for appropriation from either the National Assembly or perhaps even the presidency. So, you know, is that something we should all learn to live with, that, you know, rather than...
I think that's very wrong. Because let's take, for example, I'm also on the board of several, some companies in the country, and the MD won't say because you need to fix something
urgently,
or to fix something urgently, he will not get in touch. Will not get in touch with the Chairman Finance and General Purpose Committee. Or he says he wants to do an investment. As a result, he's going to sign money out of the treasury of the company because he cannot reach the chairman of the board. No, it's not done. That's one. Then number two, it's expected that as a Minister of Petroleum, and you would have gotten all the information that you need of what is likely going to happen for a whole year. And that is what you have put into your budget, and that is what has been appropriated. If you spend any money outside of appropriation, that is criminal, because appropriation, once it is signed, is a law.
Right.
So for you to take any money that is not appropriated, it's criminal.
So do you agree in the end with the former central bank governor, Lamido Sanusi, that money was actually missing?
Yes, I agree that money was missing, because initially the minister told us that NNPC was to refund 1.5 billion.
Yes. In
the first place, why would there be a gap of 1.5 billion? If that audit was not there, we would not have even known about that.
Yes.
And when Sanusi said, the only thing I may say, Sanusi's own may not be up to $20 billion, but I think it cannot be $1.5 billion either.
Yes.
Yeah. It may not be up to 20, but it cannot be 1.5 million. I think it will be a lot more than that. And if you also see the auditor also talked about some of the constraints that they also have to face while carrying out the audit.
Yes, and people were critical of that. Do you think that the auditors perhaps shouldn't have gone ahead and...
No, one thing I've also learned, because one thing Haiti was also doing is auditing. An auditor cannot go beyond the information that you've provided.
It depends on the information I'm giving.
Yes. Once you give, also look at the meaning of audit. Is that bring all the documents of what you have done.
Yes.
And then the auditor now look at the whole document, and from there now raises questions.
He's not an investigative reporter.
No, he's not. So people also need to know that. The auditor now look at it, okay, you did this, okay, what is the rule here? The auditor cannot say, what is the rule in America?
Yes.
No. He now look at what was done. Did he even follow the rules made by the organization? So, and if it doesn't, so the auditor only acts in accordance with the information that was provided to them.
Yes.
So based on that, that is where they release that report. So if you also provide further information, you now raise further questioning. And again, you must also remember that to carry out an audit is not a witch hunt. It's to look at, okay, what has been done properly, what wasn't done right, and first, look at what I said. The auditor will look at what was done properly,
yes,
what wasn't done properly, and then how do we make sure that certain things that were done in the past don't reoccur. And then he now moves on to that, and now move on to building a new system. So first is we must have an understanding of the actual job of the auditor, so that we don't think that is a journalist who is carrying out an investigation. Or is, now that the auditor have submitted his report, that is where the police now go a step further. Okay, the auditor said XYZ was not done properly. And then the police now go and look at it, is that the law? You violated the law. Then the police now move further to carry out what they call a criminal investigation, if there is any.
Right.
So the auditor is not the police.
Okay, and I can't have you here without talking a little bit of politics. The presidential election, who did you vote for, PDP or APC?
I can't tell you who I voted for. I think that would be that is a personal decision. That's one. Then number two, you never can know who you tell who you vote for, and the next person, the person is not happy. The election is done and dusted, and we've all moved on to an era of change, and we are hoping that the change that was voted for by Nigeria actually changes everything that we do. But we must all remember that change does not just come from the sky. The change that President Buhari promised is also, we also need to know that wherever you find yourself, you are a change agent. How you do your job.
We've got to look at the person in the mirror as well.
I see that change as something that we all need to look at ourselves and say, in your house, how do you run your house? We're not running properly before. Be the change there. How do you treat your kids? Be the change there. How do you do your job? Be the change there. The president is not going to come to your office, and while you sign away the rights of your country, the president won't be there. So change that we're talking about is for every one of us to have a higher sense of responsibility.
And some people say that the PDP with this loss is dead and buried. What do you say to that?
I think it will be sad if the PDP actually goes away, because the truth of the matter is that if ACN, CPC, ANPP, APGA, they later metamorphosed into APC, if they had gone away yesterday, we will not have the change that we are talking about today. We must know that sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. And now is for us to do things differently. It's like somebody comes and they say, I've been here for all these years. Let me try something new. That's what I've just transpired. So it's not left for the PDP to go put their house in order and look at their shortcomings that made Nigerians to reject them. And also now say, okay, let's work towards 2019, come back stronger with a higher sense of responsibility. But I think the game has changed.
The game has changed. What, in your opinion, was the singular reason why the PDP lost the presidential election?
I think they took Nigerians for granted. They have this feeling that they will be around for 50 years. They didn't hide all those noise, that they will always be around, whether we like it or not. And Nigerians got tired of that. And I think I can now say that, yes, this country, our democratic system is getting stronger. Our processes are, because if you take, for example, even in America, after you have Democrats do 8 years, their chance of doing another 4 years is very slim. It doesn't matter how good they have done. It doesn't matter how well they have done. You have Clinton that gave America all the best of everything, lowest unemployment rate, huge reserve, and debt deficit went down, high, so many things, and they still didn't vote for Democrat. They said Al Gore came up. They said no, they moved to Republican, George Bush, and Bush did his 8 years, and they also got tired of him and have Obama.
And changed.
So all of these things, our politicians should start looking at it, that at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the people. And I also give Jonathan a lot of credit, that this for once, I was elated and happy to see the former president pick up his phone and concede defeat. And it also shows a degree of sense of responsibility.
Did you expect him to concede defeat?
I wasn't expecting him.
You thought he would fight it out?
I wasn't expecting him to pick up the phone and make the call. Jonathan, as a person, I think he's a very gentle guy. He's a gentle guy. He could be too trusting. Too trusting to a fault. That for me was...
Perhaps some people say it's the isolation of the villa that makes you trust the people who come around there.
I think, when you're a president, you can know whatever you want to know, if you really want to know, because you have all the parallel of office to make that happen. So I think when they say he was isolated, I think it just had to be a matter of interest. There's a way you can break through the isolation. A president is normally in a bubble, I remember a governor telling me he wanted to visit a place and he got a security report that that place is very dangerous, he mustn't go. But the governor changed his style and he went to the place and he was giving the rousing welcome. And when he came back, I was like,
what do you guys know?
Yeah. So the bottom line is that the president is in a bubble. But I think we've moved on. Even President Buhari in his inaugural address, you saw he also passed his encomiums on the president that he has set a new standard on which future presidential elections will also be judged.
Yes.
Why I said I was also surprised, if you go by the content and character of the PDP, you won't be surprised if they actually were fighting over the election. But,
Thank you very much, Mr. Esele, for coming on 60 Minutes again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it for this week. I'm Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for watching.